So we're going to continue our OHL history series going season by season. It started with the 80-81, and we're now making our way to 1996-1997. There's 17 teams playing in the OHL with a 66-game regular season schedule. And this season, we would see the Niagara Falls Thunder relocate to Erie to become the Otters. And of course, the Thunder having some strong seasons since their time after relocating from Hamilton. They would go to the OHL final where they lost in 89 to the Peterborough Petes, and then back-to-back conference final or division final games against the Sioux Greyhounds would fall short in those two. But this team, they said they were relocating because of a drop in attendance, and they also wanted a newer facility, which Niagara Falls City Council didn't seem eager to do at the time. So Erie, Pennsylvania, welcoming the Thunder with open arms, and now we would have two U.S.-based teams and our first in the state of Pennsylvania. Looking at the standings from the 96-97 season, let's start with the East Division, where the Ottawa 67s, they would lead the way with a record of 49-11-6, 104 points, a great run for them. The Oshawa Generals, second in the division, 41-18-7, and they would have a great run, 89 points would be their total. Third in the division, the Peterborough Petes, 39-25-2 for 80 points. The Kingston Frontenacs, they finished fourth in the division, 25-35-6 for 56 points. And the Belleville Bulls, they would take the fifth seed, 22-37-7 was their record for 51 points. Well, the North Bay Centennials on the outside looking in at the playoffs with a record of 14-44-8, good for 36 points. In the Central Division, it would be the Kitchener Rangers who would lead the way, a record of 34-22-10 for 78 points. The Guelph Storm, so close to catching the Rangers. They finished with a record of 35-25-6 for 76 points. The Barrie Colts also near the top with a record of 33-23-10 for 76 points. And then there's a bit of a drop-off here. We'd see the Owen Sound Platers, fourth in the division, 27-37-2 for 56 points. While the Erie Otters, fifth in their first season in Pennsylvania with a record of 23-36-7, 53 points, and they would make the playoffs in their first year. While the Sudbury Wolves, missing the postseason, with a record of 21-37-8 for 50 points. And over in the West Division, it would be the Sioux Greyhounds leading the way. 39-17-10 was their record for 88 points. The Sarnia Sting second, 35-24-7 for 77 points. The Windsor Spitfires would be third, 29-29-8 was their record for 66 points. While the Detroit Whalers coming in fourth with a record of 24-34-6 for 58 points. And the London Knights, after a bottoming out in the season prior, they would improve, 13-51-2 for 28 points. However, they would still miss the playoffs. So after splitting the previous season for the Detroit Whalers, they were spending time between Auburn Hills and Small Oak Park Ice Arena, which was not a huge capacity in the Detroit suburbs. The Detroit Whalers, they would find their new permanent home in Plymouth, and it was the newly built CompuWare Sports Arena, and Peter Karmanos found the property, and they got right to work. It took them 6 months to build the arena. If you've ever taken in a game when the Whalers are playing at the CompuWare, it felt like a warehouse. It didn't feel like an arena, but they needed a home after being evicted from Joe Louis Arena. And they would find it out in the suburb of Plymouth. And that would be their permanent home after bouncing around for a few seasons. Now, going into the playoffs, the Ottawa 67s, they waived their right for a first-round bye in the playoffs because in the season prior, they were upset in the second round by the Belleville Bulls where they were swept. So they decided, we'll pass on the bye and allow the Oshawa Generals to have the bye. Brian Kilray was not happy with how it went. He wanted his team to be right into the playoffs. And so this season, after winning their division, they would pass on the bye and give it to the second place Oshawa Generals. And it kind of helped Oshawa, as we'll see in the playoff tree in just a second. But first, let's look at the top scorers from this season. Marc Savard of the Oshawa Generals led the way. 43 goals, 87 assists, 130 points. Second in scoring is Joe Thornton of the Sioux Greyhounds, 41 goals, 81 assists, 122 points. Alan McCauley, third from the Ottawa 67s, 56 goals, 56 assists, 112 points. Then you have Richard Uniacke from the Sioux Greyhounds, 44 goals, 66 assists, 110 points. Trevor Letowski of the Sarnia Sting had 35 goals, 73 assists, 108 points. Todd Norman from the Guelph Storm, 47 goals, 68 assists, 105 points. Joe Sorosky from the Sioux Greyhounds, he had 54 goals, 49 assists, 103 points. Eighth in scoring is Jan Bulish of the Barrie Colts, 42 goals, 61 assists, 103 points. Then Jonathan Sim, ninth in scoring from the Sarnia Sting, 56 goals, 39 assists, 95 points. And Matt Cook of the Windsor Spitfires would round out the top 10 in scoring with 45 goals, 50 assists, 95 points. So going into the postseason, like I mentioned, the Ottawa 67s, they gave up their bye to the Oshawa Generals, and the other team to get a bye would be the Kitchener Rangers. So let's start with the East Division playoff bracket. So the Ottawa 67s would face Belleville in back-to-back seasons, and this time it'd be the 67s winning that series in 6 games, while the Peterborough Petes, they would take care of the Kingston Frontenacs in 5 games. Moving over to the Central, it'd be the Guelph Storm taking the Erie Otters in 5 games, while the Barrie Colts win their first playoff series in franchise history with a sweep over the Owen Sound Platers. And over in the West Division, we would see Sault Ste. Marie taking on the Detroit Whalers, and it's the Greyhounds who win that series in 5, while the Sarnia Sting, they would take care of the Windsor Spitfires, also in 5 games. So in the quarterfinal, the Oshawa Generals, who of course had that bye in the first round, would face the Peterborough Petes, and they would take care of their rival in a 6-game series. The Kitchener Rangers, they needed 7 games to defeat the Sarnia Sting, while the Ottawa 67s, they would take care of the Barrie Colts in 5 games, and the Guelph Storm, they would upset the Sioux Greyhounds in 6 games. So in the semifinal, we would see 2 classic rivals. We would see the Oshawa Generals and Kitchener Rangers, and it's the Generals upsetting Kitchener in 6 games, while the Ottawa 67s, they would need 7 games to take care of the Guelph Storm, who are looking to make it back-to-back trips to the OHL final. So for the J. Ross Robertson Cup, 2 teams very familiar with one another, the Ottawa 67s and Oshawa Generals. And remember, Ottawa gave up the bye in the first round, so this gave Oshawa a little bit of rest, and it would be the Generals winning this series in 6 games. So quite the rivalry between those 2 teams, being in the East Division, and great. I think it's neat how they did the whole reseeding. I almost kind of wish the OHL would do that today, so we could see rivalries like this for an OHL final. Could you imagine today if we had an Oshawa Ottawa OHL final? I think the 2 fan bases would go insane. I think we would have some very passionate fan bases there if those 2 teams went at it. But it would be the Oshawa Generals winning the OHL Championship in 1997, and that meant a trip to the Memorial Cup, which was being held by the Hull Olympique. So in the final, the Olympique, they were QMJHL champions. So the runner-up, Chicoutimi Seguin, they were included, while the WHL was represented by the Lethbridge Hurricanes. Now, there was a memorable game during the round robin where Hull had a 6-1 lead on Lethbridge, but the Hurricanes would come back to win 7-6 in overtime. So you see these games quite often where the score seems lopsided and there's no way a team's going to come back. But in junior hockey, sometimes you don't know what's going to happen. So Lethbridge, a memorable win there. And then the Oshawa Generals in the round robin, they had a record of 2-1. So they had to face Lethbridge in the semifinal. And the Hurricanes, they would defeat the Generals in that semifinal in overtime by a final score of 5-4. Now, looking at your award winners from the 1996-97 season, starting off with the Red Tilson, it'd be Alan McCauley from the 67s winning that. Well, Marc Savard would win the Eddie Powers Memorial Trophy from the Oshawa Generals. Brian Kilray would win the Matt Layden Trophy. I'm surprised we don't have a trophy named after Brian Kilray, just with his history in the Ontario Hockey League. The Jim Mahon Memorial Trophy went to Joe Sorosky of the Sioux Greyhounds. The OHL Goaltender of the Year was Zach Bierk. He played for the Peterborough Petes. The Jack Ferguson Award went to Charlie Stevens, who was drafted by the Toronto St. Michael's Majors. So we're going to be talking about them soon. Then the OHL Executive of the Year was Ed Rowe. We had the Ems Family Award handed out to Peter Sarno of the Windsor Spitfires. The OHL Humanitarian of the Year, Mike Martone of the Peterborough Petes. Well, Zach Bierk, the goaltender, he won the Leo Lalonde Memorial Trophy, and the Bobby Smith Trophy was awarded to Jack McCracken of the Sioux Greyhounds. So the 96-97 season would be the last year of 17 teams in the OHL, as in the late 1990s, we'd still see some more expansion on the horizon. So this is just a summary of the 96-97 season. Let me know in the comments below something that stood out from that season if you were able to follow along that year with your OHL club. Loved the interaction. Thank you very much for all your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon.